When it comes to collecting figures, and whether it's modern action figures made of plastic with peg joints or jointless pegs, or pegs and joints that work together, or, metal figures that our parents and grandparents, and, well, even maybe our grandchildren play with. Who knows? They're multi-generational. But no matter what, we all want our figures to work together, which is why scale is so important. And I think no toy line has jumped so many scales as Star Wars. Or maybe I shouldn't say jumped, but rather provided for. And it brings up the interesting point is there a definitive scale for any toy line? Or should figures just be offered willy-nilly, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, sometimes more kid-friendly, sometimes more collector-friendly? And Star Wars has absolutely benefited from the fact that it is a worldwide phenomenon brand that can support so many scales. And for people who collect 6-inch, there's a opportunity for you to collect Star Wars. But for the most part, the brand has been known as a 3 3/4 line. This is mainly because the vintage line, the Kenner line back in the 80s, was built around vehicle play, and the figures were just the accessories for the vehicles, at least at first. But it wasn't long before that overtook that concept, and the figures became what everyone wanted to collect. They were affordable, you could put them in your pocket, put them on your wall, play with them anywhere, and that carried through to the modern line, where 3 3/4, when it was relaunched as Power of the Force 2 in '95, carried on the 3 3/4 scale. And it has worked very well for a brand like Star Wars because it is a giant world of thousands of characters, and this is a scale that permits that to be made because, well, it's relatively inexpensive, especially compared to something like a 12-inch figure, if you will. And it allows the most obscure possible characters to appear, especially when fans gather and start petitioning companies to make characters that are seen just running in the background with what appears to be a 1970s ice cream maker, but then is later retconned in Mandalorian to actually be a safe carrying valuables. Whew! Okay, yes. So collectors petitioning toy companies, no matter what the brand, is not a new thing. But my thought in this video is not about necessarily petitioning for figures, but doing figures at what might be considered the right scale. As an example, talking about Star Wars and talking about 3 3/4 being the predominant scale, when characters are released outside of this scale, it can kind of tend to be, well, almost insulting to the fans in a way, because we've invested so much in the scale, and to get a character that's not available in the scale we collect can be frustrating. Case in point, Duros, our good buddy Duros, right? I think that new Cad Bane is one of these species, and the Pneumonians are sort of a subspecies of them. I don't know. I'm talking about these two guys from the Cantina. These are the Duroses that I know and love, the ones I grew up with. Whoever else is part of this species, more power to them. But they really stood out in the Cantina because they had kind of that classic, almost gray alien look. I mean, I know they're blue with red eyes, and they're dressed up in Planet of the Apes spacesuits that were borrowed from the movie where, Caesar went to Earth, or not Caesar, he was born. Anyway, I think it was that middle Planet of the Apes movie. Escape from Planet of the Apes, that was the one. All right, back to Elors Maddock here, who was released in the 3 3/4 line. So, fan choice figure, obviously, like me, a lot of people really love this design. I think just because it feels so alien. It's got that 1950s alien thing going for it, and it makes a darn good toy, especially because, big red bug eyes sell. What can I say? It's very alluring. And in the Cantina, there were, count them, 2 of them. There was Ellis Maddock on the left and Barris Keegan. Go look up on Wikipedia, I don't know. But this guy, the guy in the brown and the guy in the white. So the guy in the white has been done a few times in toys and has been done in 3 3/4, as I mentioned a few slides ago, as a fan's choice figure. So while we've gotten this guy and we haven't gotten the human that's walking around in the Planet of the Apes suit, well, space suit, not monkey suit, apes and monkeys, one has a tail, look it up. Well, we have not gotten what I'll call the brown shirted Duros in 3 3/4 series, form, factor, line, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, okay, could always be on the wish list, except this figure has appeared before, and it's shown up both in a Micro Machine set that was, it was alien heads that opened up to a mini environment, and you got a mini slug figure of the brown shirted Duros, and in this Galactic Heroes Cantina set, where he was one of the background aliens, literally behind Ben there. So Yeah, it's like coming up with empty pockets. We can get this character, but we can't get this character in the scale that defines most of our collection. All right, another example of this, and in a different backstory way, is the Tonika sisters. And I've done a few videos on them, but I'll recap a little of that here if this is your first time here on Spector Creative, or your 12th or 200th. So yes, Tonika sisters, female character from A New Hope, 1977, on set, no CGI, and yeah, it's a female wearing a skin-tight suit. Is it shocking that fans would want this? Because, well, there she is. I mean, these characters, there's two of them. They're sisters, and they're in the cantina. They're behind, they're sort of behind the bartender, and there are a couple pull-away shots where we see them because, again, they were on set, unlike most of the cantina aliens, which were added in inset shots later. So while they were supposed to be twins, I guess like Luke and Leia are twins, but not exactly identical, and they've been in the lore for years, they've shown up in press photos, and they've shown up in officially licensed books, as a physical action figure toy, well, that's a different story. So, sure, you can dress up like them and go to a convention, and that's just, cosplay and for fun. But to actually produce these figures, why can't they be done? Well, it kind of goes back to the actress who played one of them, the taller one, Brie. Well, she has a campaign right now to get this figure made, but the reason that it actually can't be made is because of her involvement the previous time. So again, this figure has been done, just not at 3 3/4. What we're looking at here is the Micro Machines Action Fleet figure, not the Micro Machines. Micro Machines were the tiny ones with slug figures. Action Fleet, they got minor articulation at the arms and the legs, and it was more about vehicle interacting with figure play, as opposed to Micro Machines were really vehicle play. So there she is as one of the pack-in aliens with this Bantha, because, Bantha's, I guess, walked in the cantina. Now, why is she on the blacklist? Well, as I said, the actress who played Brie Tonika has been on a campaign to see fans' wish come true and have this figure actually appear in the 3 3/4 line. This little 1-inch figure is just a reminder of another toy that we can't have. And again, it just feels so frustrating to see a toy exist in a different scale and not at the scale we collect. And while fans have looked at, there might be ways around the licensing issues because she showed up on a wanted poster in, I don't know if that was Rebels or Clone Wars, the reason that there's an issue, and again, I've made a whole video on this, is originally when that Galoob Micro Machine figure, the actress sort of shined a spotlight on the fact that back in the 1970s, when George Lucas was making Star Wars, nobody really knew it was going to be the worldwide phenomenon it is. And the idea of having every single background actor, especially all those Cantina aliens, signing likeness rights, that paperwork pretty much doesn't exist. So making a figure of one of the Tonika sisters shines a spotlight on this, and that's why, unfortunately, while I would love to see, this actress's, Time for Tonika campaign come to fruition, by her noting during the Galoob release that they didn't pay her likeness rights, opened the door now that anyone who didn't sign likeness rights. So it's kind of just better to take that off the board, and way easier to not make Tonika sister figures than to have to deal with all that. All right. Another example of a figure that we really want in 3 3/4 that exists in other lines is this guy. Now, an Issy Tib is a species, not a character, despite the fact that this figure was released as Issy Tib. But, that happens. Look at, Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto. Which one's the species? Which one's the name? Go watch that video, nerds. All right, so the Issy Tib that we got in Power of the Force 2, as seen from the back of the package, is the one from the Rebel briefing on Home 1 carrier. They're in the background on sort of the top left there. So, yeah, blink and you really do miss them. I don't think I even knew they were Issy Tib on the Home 1 cruiser until I got that figure. The Issy Tib that I knew was this one, the one from Jabba's Palace, because he has quite a bit of screen time, granted as a background alien, but screen time is screen time, and he pretty much shows up just as much as other background characters like Squidhead and Reese and, okay, I know his name is Tessic. Again, go look it up on Wikipedia. Plus, Issy Tib showed up in quite a lot of publicity shots for all of the new cool aliens we were going to see in Return of the Jedi. So, yeah, it's no wonder that fans have wanted this Issy Tib versus the Rebel version that we got in Power of the Force 2. And, whether the character is being called by his proper name or his species name, in the end, it's still getting a representation of that character who, as I said, had quite a lot of screen time. I mean, he's standing right behind Luke during his whole speech to Jabba. So this figure of the Home 1 Issy Tib doesn't really satisfy the need for the Jabba Palace Issy Tib. And not to rub salt in wounds, but that's kind of what we're doing on this video, is talking about the frustration of not being able to get a figure that we've seen in a different scale. And so yes, this Issy Tib has shown up once again, this time in the Galoob Action Fleet line again, this time coming with Jabba as a, kind of like, well, another one of those action packs, if you will, with one oversized item and a whole bunch of minifigures, and he was one of those said minifigures. So, yeah, this was actually the last time we got a Slice Noodles in the original vintage look as well. So, Collection 8 Battle Pack was quite the pack to get. Not to mention you got Slave Leia in there, who will never see a toy. So, hey, you get a lot with that pack. And you pretty much got the only version of Issy Tib from Jabba's Palace. We have yet to get it in the 3 3/4, what would be considered the, definitive line. All right, going up in scale, we have the whole Jaxxon thing, and I've even actually made a whole video about this one compared to another Space Bunny for a line I worked on. So as a just quick reminder to get everyone up to speed, Jaxxon is a bunny Lapin-esque alien from the Marvel run of Star Wars back in the early 80s, late 70s. And while he started off a little bit more alien-like than, I guess, Easter Bunny-esque, over time he took on more and more of a rabbit feel, probably because of the buck teeth and the ears. Of course, the whiskers certainly helped with the, rabbit appeal. And hey, come on, anytime you have a space bunny, it's awesome and demands a toy. So while it's cool that this character has been resurrected by Disney and made even more kid-friendly by putting him in the kid-aimed comics, the adventure comics, and giving him an even more animated look, kind of almost looks like Space Roger Rabbit. Well, we have a toy of Jaxxon, but it's a 6-inch figure. So again, character that fans have been asking for years because he really stood out in the Marvel run. Well, you can get a figure of him, but not in 3 3/4. What would be considered a definitive scale. And we could probably do a whole video just talking about definitive scales, but I think based on the sheer number of action figures released in 3 3/4, it's pretty easy to say that 3 3/4 is the definitive one. Alright, so rounding this up, we have some new entries into the Star Wars universe, which again, are popping up in lots of different scales, like the 6-inch, which I will say 6-inch is kind of taking over as the definitive scale. I just don't think it's there yet. Now, there's also the Mission Fleet series, which has benefited from the Bad Batch, and while this could become a new definitive scale, I have a feeling it's more of a passive toy, kind of like the Galoob stuff, like, it's here now, but it may not be here in 5 years. But it is really great for kids, and it's a perfect scale for kids to engage in the property. So while we have had some quick-to-market troopers from Bad Batch, and by quick-to-market I mean easy repaints of background characters or guest stars from different episodes, we have not gotten Bad Batch proper characters, meaning the group, the gang, the troop, the squad, whatever they go by these days. So yeah, you can get some Bad Batch figures in 6-inch and in kid-friendly galactic mission heroes. No, not galactic, just mission heroes. But sadly, no 3 3/4 yet. So what do you think? Are there characters that you've seen in other scales, but not in a definitive scale you collect, whether it's from Star Wars or other lines? Love to know. Leave them in the comments below, and I'll comment back, and we'll get into a cool discussion. Thanks for watching. Hope you can share this video with others. It's the best way to show support for this channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.